Carl Jung believed that one of the most important moments in a person's psychological life is also one of the most frightening. It is the moment when the identity you have lived inside for years begins to dissolve, but nothing new has taken its place yet. From the outside, this moment often looks like stagnation. From the inside, it feels like confusion, anxiety, emptiness, or a quiet sense of being lost. But Jung did not see this state as a failure. He saw it as a necessary passage. Most people are taught to avoid this feeling at all costs. We're told that not knowing who we are or where we're going means something is wrong. We're encouraged to fix it quickly, to reorient ourselves as soon as possible. But Jung believed that the urge to escape this state is precisely what prevents real change from happening. To understand why, Jung said we first have to understand how identity forms. From early childhood, we begin adapting ourselves to the world. We learn what behaviors are rewarded and which ones are punished. We discover which emotions are acceptable and which ones create problems. Slowly, we shape ourselves around what is expected of us. Over time, these adaptations solidify into an identity. Jung called this identity the persona. The persona is not fake. It is functional. It allows us to belong, to succeed, to survive. It helps us navigate social life, build careers, form relationships, and meet expectations. Without it, we wouldn't be able to function in society at all. But the persona comes at a cost. It represents only a fraction of who we are. It highlights traits that are useful and hides those that are inconvenient. It simplifies us so we can be understood and accepted. And for a long time, this simplification feels necessary and even rewarding. Until one day, it doesn't. At some point, often during early adulthood, midlife, or after a major life transition, the persona begins to lose its vitality. The goals that once drove you stop motivating you. The roles you once played begin to feel hollow. You may still be productive, still successful, still admired, but inwardly, something feels empty. Jung believed this is not because you failed at life. It's because the psyche is asking for more truth. This is often when people say, "I feel lost." What's actually happening is that the psyche is withdrawing energy from an identity that no longer reflects the totality of who you are. The unconscious begins to demand attention. In Jungian psychology, the unconscious is not merely a repository of forgotten memories. It is an active, intelligent system that seeks balance. It contains everything that conscious identity excludes: instincts, emotions, creativity, vulnerability, aggression, spirituality, and unrealized potential. At the center of this unconscious material lies the shadow. The shadow consists of all the parts of yourself you had to suppress in order to become acceptable. Traits that were discouraged, emotions that felt unsafe, desires that conflicted with your role. These parts were not destroyed. They were simply pushed out of awareness. For a long time, the shadow stays quiet, but it never disappears. When the persona becomes too rigid, when we identify too fully with who we think we're supposed to be, the shadow begins to press upward. And when it does, it destabilizes our sense of identity. You may feel emotions that don't fit your self-image. You may feel drawn toward paths that contradict your old values. You may experience irritability, sadness, anxiety, or restlessness without knowing why. Jung believed this disorientation is the unconscious demanding integration. This is why the period before transformation often feels darker than expected. Jung described this phase as a descent. In myths and dreams, it appears as falling into darkness, entering caves, descending into water, or losing one's way. Psychologically, it manifests as confusion, emptiness, and loss of direction. You no longer believe in the old story of who you are. But the new story hasn't revealed itself yet. This in-between state is what Jung saw as the most psychologically dangerous, and the most psychologically fertile, moment in a person's life. The ego, which depends on clarity and control, panics in this state. It wants answers. It wants certainty. It wants a new label, a new plan, a new identity. Jung warned that rushing to resolve this uncertainty often leads to superficial change. Replacing one mask with another does not create transformation. True change requires allowing the old structure to dissolve without immediately rebuilding it. This is profoundly uncomfortable because it feels like psychological death. Jung believed that every major transformation involves a symbolic death of the old self. This is why people often experience fear during this period, not fear of external danger, but fear of internal disintegration. Who am I if I'm not this person anymore? What am I worth if my old goals don't matter? Where do I belong if I no longer fit the role I played? Jung believed these questions cannot be answered intellectually. They must be lived. He called the capacity to remain in this state holding the tension of opposites. You are suspended between certainty and uncertainty, meaning and meaninglessness, identity and non-identity. This tension is painful, but it is creative. Just as pressure transforms carbon into diamonds, psychological tension generates new structure. If you flee the tension, nothing changes. If you endure it, something new begins to form beneath the surface. During this phase, many people experience isolation. They may feel disconnected from friends, family, or society. Conversations feel shallow. Shared ambitions feel irrelevant. Jung believed this happens because individuation begins as an inward process. You are withdrawing energy from the collective identity in order to develop an inner one. This does not mean rejecting others. It means temporarily turning inward. Jung emphasized that this inward turn is not selfish. It is necessary. Without it, the individual remains defined entirely by external expectations. Individuation requires learning to orient oneself by an inner compass rather than social approval. As you remain in this state, subtle changes begin to occur. You may feel drawn to solitude, reflection, or creative expression. You may begin journaling, reading, meditating, or simply spending more time alone. Dreams may become more vivid. Emotional reactions may feel stronger. Jung believed these are signs that the unconscious is communicating more directly. Importantly, this process cannot be forced. The ego wants timelines. The psyche does not operate on deadlines. It unfolds symbolically and indirectly. Jung warned that impatience often causes people to abandon the process just before it bears fruit. At first, the emptiness feels unbearable. But if you stay with it long enough, its quality begins to change. What once felt like a void begins to feel like space. What once felt like chaos begins to feel like possibility. You may still not know where you're going, but you begin to feel less anxious about not knowing. You start trusting that something meaningful is unfolding, even if you can't yet name it. This is the beginning of individuation. Individuation, in Jung's view, is the process of becoming who you truly are. Not who you were conditioned to be. Not who you thought you had to be to survive. But the integrated totality of your conscious and unconscious self. It is not about self-improvement. It is about self-integration. Integrating the shadow does not mean indulging every impulse or acting out destructive behavior. It means acknowledging what was denied and reclaiming the energy trapped inside it. When the shadow is ignored, it controls us unconsciously. When it is integrated, it becomes a source of vitality. As individuation deepens, your values begin to shift. You become less concerned with status and more concerned with meaning. Less driven by validation and more guided by resonance. Your relationships change, not because you reject people, but because you relate to them more honestly. This often looks like loss from the outside. Old ambitions fall away, certain relationships fade, familiar identities dissolve, but inwardly, something stabilizes. You feel more grounded, even if your life looks less defined. Jung believed that many people avoid this process entirely. They cling to familiar identities because disintegration feels terrifying. But he warned that avoiding inner death leads to stagnation. The unlived life does not disappear, it waits. Often, it returns later as bitterness, regret, or despair. Those who allow the process, however, emerge transformed. Not necessarily happier, not necessarily more confident, but more whole. They are less fragmented internally, less afraid of ambiguity, less dependent on external approval. They trust their inner movement even when the path ahead is unclear. This is why Jung believed that feeling lost is often a sign of readiness. Not readiness for answers, but readiness for depth. Readiness to outgrow an identity that no longer fits. Readiness to encounter oneself without illusions. So if you are here now, Disoriented, uncertain, unsure of what comes next. Jung would not tell you to escape this feeling. He would tell you to honor it. You are standing in a liminal space. The old self is dissolving. The new self is still forming. This is not failure. This is transformation in its earliest, most fragile stage. You are not broken. You are between versions. And if you remain present, if you listen rather than rush, what emerges on the other side is not a perfected version of who you were, but a truer version of who you are. This is why you feel lost right before you change.